Khenpo Sodargye zonen molum chembor ngabjat bakar darngam santu shermardor tomba tuje chanla lo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the true meaning of the Tathagata. In order to truly liberate all sentient beings, let us all give rise to the supreme and ultimate bodhicitta. Next, over the course of 2 lessons, we will discuss with everyone a section from Mipham Rinpoche's miscellaneous teachings called Instructions for Practitioners. We will be thoroughly discussing this particular part. Actually, in Mipham Rinpoche's extensive collection of profound teachings, there are also, for example, specific teachings provided for great practitioners, profound teachings designed for experienced yogis, foundational teachings intended for young monks, and practical teachings offered to villagers. There are many scattered teachings, and among them, I recently translated this particular teaching. In fact, it's related to the previous lesson, the wisdom sword of demon subduing. Back then, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche also taught this lesson in class, and it was truly profound, and did some simultaneous translation while teaching. But it seems that there is no clear record of it. Perhaps it was included in the collection of teachings from that time, and it should be there. So today we will talk about this profound and precious course with everyone. Let's carefully study this teaching together right now. Instructions for Practitioners, the essential collection of illusory path instructions. These are teachings specifically for practitioners, for those individuals who truly engage in actual practical application, not primarily for academic researchers, nor for people in the broader secular world, including, for example, skilled carpenters, diligent farmers, or dedicated workers, or for people in other worldly professions. It's certainly not aimed at those who are just working. It's not really for them at all. Indeed, not in any way. The main focus is on those who can realize the Dharma in this very life. This is a teaching for such practitioners. Of course, this teaching, after I finished translating it, I felt it was a bit profound. It might be more suitable for those who have a good foundation in practice. For people who already have some background in Madhyamaka and Dzogchen, it's extremely beneficial. For us beginners, perhaps the teachings for lay people, those might be a bit more suitable, because here the primary focus is on practices like seeing everything as dreamlike and illusory. For us, for the average person, new student, it's something we can only really talk about on a very superficial level. When it comes to contemplation, we just roughly try to set our intention. In reality, it might not be particularly effective. But regardless, this is probably the path we truly need to take. So this content is extremely precious, but we don't know how well we can actually practice it. Let's see and try to understand it according to our own circumstances. Its subtitle is The Essential Collection of Illusory Path Instructions. Its main practice is not focused on other things, for example, not on preliminary practices, nor on other Madhyamaka practices or the cultivation of bodhicitta. None of these are discussed here. Here, the main focus is on the practice of the path as being dreamlike and illusory. Moreover, this path instruction is also a concise summary, not an especially detailed or extensive explanation, nor is it, for example, our practice of seeing things as dreamlike and illusory is explained in great detail in the Finding Comfort and Ease in the Illusoriness of Things text. There, it is discussed extremely extensively. In the exoteric tradition, texts like the Sutra, requested by the illusionist, and many other sutras discuss this topic. And there are quite a few scriptures and treatises that discern the dreamlike and illusory nature of things. There are quite a lot of them. So if we were to talk about all of these, it would be an enormous amount. Therefore, the omniscient master used a very special kind of wisdom to distill from these thousands of sutras and treatises the practice of seeing things as dreamlike and illusory, essential instructions for seeing through present life, which are extremely important key points indeed. Here it's explained in especially simple language. I counted. There are about 18 verses. The text is very brief, but the content is truly profound. If one truly possesses profound wisdom, it is indeed extremely meaningful. Everyone should deeply contemplate it well and also diligently practice meditation on it. Because now, unlike before when we were all together at the Institute, all the Dharma friends would be gathered together in one assembly hall, or gathered in one place, and everyone would study together. Now, that's not the case. At least for the time being, we don't have this opportunity. But even without this opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, perhaps this is actually a very good thing as well. I said that dandelions are everywhere. They can take root and sprout wherever they are. Recently, I've also been collecting a lot of dandelions. There are dandelions in Tibet, in Han regions, and even in the West. But perhaps this also relates to our future connections. And of course, I collect them mainly for health and to make tea. Since I was young, I've had a connection with dandelions, growing up with them every summer. So not long ago, maybe I had a rather special and unique karmic connection, collecting a very large amount of them, and all of us here are also mainly emphasizing this kind of significant karmic connection this year. So in every single corner, whether it's in places where Black people predominantly live, where Asian communities reside, or where white people primarily live, in every single place, I sincerely hope that every individual should actively promote the Dharma and diligently practice in this particular way. Recently, I happened to see on the official Weibo account of a great master. He went to a place in Africa and met two bhikkhunis, female monastic teachers. They said, "Here we are, practicing and embodying the spirit and karmic connection of the dandelion, practicing here and benefiting all sentient beings. Seeing this made me very happy, and I am especially grateful to everyone for having such a spirit." Honestly, I feel the same way myself. As for us, we call ourselves Mahayana Buddhists in words, but in actual practice, it doesn't matter where we die, as long as we are alive and can bring even a little benefit to all sentient beings in this present life, because a lifetime of practice, it doesn't matter if we die in a place where the Dharma flourishes or in a place where the Dharma does not flourish. There really shouldn't be any preference in this regard. Personally, I've emphasized this several times before, whether it's in a hospital at the end, among white people or Black people, or in a bustling city or a quiet, peaceful place. None of it truly really matters at all in the grand scheme of things, because one's lifelong practice is what truly matters. If at the very moment of death, when you take your last breath, it truly doesn't matter at all where the body is ultimately placed. So all of us inherently have this significant kind of responsibility and spirit. Therefore, today's teaching, although very short, just 18 verses, if someone is truly practicing and diligently applying these principles, they will probably understand, oh, as practitioners, we shouldn't be too attached. The main point is that everything is like a dream or an illusion. Next, it talks about the form seen by the eyes, and then from the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body, and finally, any conceptual thoughts that arise in the mind. They're all like a dream or an illusion. The main thing is, if you understand this one sentence, then today's lesson, at least in terms of its framework, will be beneficial to everyone. So our main focus is on this teaching. Next, we begin with the homage verse.
Ja khurnin mor shepe gelgar sor dangsang dingen ningmar na zo erdnger na zo do stior namgyang machang cherdang che.
Recalling dispels the darkness of samsara's delusion. Manjushri, the radiant sun, bestows sublime virtue. In this degenerate world, countless sufferings surge violently. Sentient beings are unwholesome, weighed down by greed and anger. Here, on one hand, he pays homage to Manjushri Bodhisattva for bestowing blessings. On the other hand, why compose this treatise? He is telling everyone to truly and deeply value spiritual practice. As for why it is Manjushri Bodhisattva, actually, as long as we diligently recall him, then the delusion of samsara that has persisted in our mind streams since beginningless time, this confusion of cyclic existence, or the profound darkness of being completely lost and adrift in the endless cycle of samsara, all such suffering and confusion can be entirely dispelled. Therefore, Manjushri Bodhisattva is truly like the brilliant and illuminating sun shining brightly in the vast sky, bestowing all auspiciousness upon sentient beings, granting all that is virtuous and wonderful, and opening up incomparable wisdom. As is also mentioned in the Buddhist scriptures, in the Sutra of Manjushri's Parinirvana, it is also stated, merely hearing the sacred name of Manjushri Bodhisattva can immediately dispel the negative karma of birth and death that has been accumulated over an astonishing 1.2 billion kalpas. So if we simply think of him, pray to him, or visualize him, it is indeed extremely special, especially for us as later practitioners. Everyone often prays to Manjushri Bodhisattva as well. We have also, in front of our esteemed teacher,
as mentioned earlier, indeed made the aspiration to recite 100 million Manjushri mantras, as well as 100 million recitations of the syllable At. We ourselves haven't completed all of them, but including the Tsok offerings, at that time it was said that during solar and lunar eclipses, we also diligently accumulated them. This is different from other Dharma practices and has established a very special karmic connection with Manjushri Bodhisattva. So everyone can also profoundly rely on the blessing power of Manjushri Bodhisattva by frequently and sincerely praying to him with devotion or by diligently and continuously keeping his benevolent presence in their minds. This is very important. In some sutras and treatises compiled by Nagarjuna Bodhisattva, it is also mentioned like the brilliant sun of the world dispelling the darkness of the three poisons. At that time, it seemed to be in homage to the Buddha or something similar. In general, the brilliant sun of the world is often used as a metaphor for dispelling the darkness of the three poisons, like the brilliant sun of the world dispelling the darkness of the three poisons. Therefore, through our prayers, this is also very important, especially as a practitioner, as I have mentioned before, for example, when practicing Vajrakilaya or Guru Rinpoche's teachings, this is also a very important and significant point. Previously, Khenpo Achu's guru also explicitly told him, if you genuinely feel that your personal view is entirely and absolutely correct, and you have a higher understanding and everything seems fine, but that's not the case, at the most critical moments, when you encounter certain situations, it's like being besieged by a pack of dogs. Nothing seems to help. At such very crucial times, great accomplished masters of the past all placed special emphasis on practicing wrathful deities' methods and techniques. At that time, he was instructed to practice three methods. One was the practice of the wrathful mother, another was the practice of Yamantaka, and the third was the practice of Vajrakilaya. Among these three, practicing any one of them, or focusing on one very important practice. So for all of you very present here, in addition to your regular daily practices and also your routines, try to practice Manjushri more often, or if you have received the empowerment and have some connection with the Nyingma's secret teachings, then you can practice the Wrathful Mother. As for the Wrathful Mother, we also have the profound and significant practice of Vajrayogini, and among the revered 21 Taras, there are also many powerful indeed and wrathful Dakinis truly, as well as the practice of the Black Wrathful Mother. For example, in foreign countries, what is especially valued is the Black Wrathful Mother practice of the first Dujom Rinpoche, the practice of the Black Wrathful Mother, including the practice of Chod. They place great importance on these. Second, Yamantaka. Some of the practices from Mifam Rinpoche also mention this, as well as Vajrakilaya. The Vajrakilaya amulet of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok is very important, and also the practice of Wrathful Guru Rinpoche, Dorje Drolo. These, perhaps in the degenerate age of today, are truly necessary as external demons become extremely rampant. Simply reciting the mantra of a peaceful yidam may not be enough. So on one hand, we recite the mantra of the peaceful yidam, Manjushri, and practice the Om Garapatanati mantra, important. But on the other hand, Manjushri transforms into a wrathful deity, which in some spiritual traditions is widely called Yamantaka, while in many others it is known by different names. In many Nyingma Terma teachings, he is Yamantaka. This practice is also incredibly important. So first of all, if you truly and sincerely wish to receive genuine auspiciousness and abundant blessings within your consciousness, you still have to rely on yourself. If you don't pray and you don't visualize, although the deity has certain blessings and power, but you may not get it, then it is said that now this evil world is filled with various kinds of pain, including diseases, wars, and troubles of all living beings. These pains are like waves. They are especially huge and surging fiercely. For ordinary people like us, when these sufferings and inauspicious events occur, it's hard to stop when they flood in, and they can be quite destructive in this era. Moreover, most sentient beings' bodies and minds are not upright. If we look at the world right now, truly, we can see in many countries, including the leaders and also the businessmen below them, many people's minds are not upright. Just look at what's happening in the world, whether it's the manufacturing of weapons or those with power bullying each other. In every corner of the world, many people are actively involved in politics. They rely entirely on their own considerable power to bully those who are below them, some other weaker individuals. Those involved in business and economics also very often, whether it's in medicine or in various products. It's all fake. Many are counterfeit or substandard products with dishonest intentions. If people's intentions were upright, if everyone strove to uphold the law of cause and effect, then there wouldn't be so many unsatisfactory phenomena in this world. There wouldn't be so many unpleasant situations. All of these things wouldn't exist. So now the minds of sentient beings, it really is especially dishonest and cunning, with all sorts of deceitful actions and words spreading everywhere, overwhelming everything. We should realize that nowadays we must restrain the behavior of those around us. And then looking at the various behaviors in countries all over the world, all sorts of actions are being taken, including, I think, some countries now elect their highest leaders today and then impeach them and put them in prison tomorrow. In fact, this world is truly filled with many phenomena that are far from ideal. Moreover, within the continuum of sentient beings, greed, ignorance, and afflictions, these are extremely serious matters. Like powerful ocean waves, they are incredibly hard to stop. When they surge up and become overwhelming, even we ourselves are completely helpless. When we see others' greed, now, if you look at anti-corruption efforts in various countries, some don't pay any attention at all, while others, even though they do pay attention, the more they focus on it, the more serious the problem seems to become, and anger is also becoming more and more severe. Moreover, nowadays in every country, all the money is spent every single day on making all kinds of destructive weapons. They are always meticulously preparing for every possible scenario. They clearly don't see the value in other people's lives at all. As ordinary human beings, each and every one of us, we must recognize this profound disregard for human life. There are big differences, even in the way we refer to people. For example, if someone on our side is particularly fierce, if they possess a very strong and intense sense of anger, we often call them a true hero, but the other side would call such a person a tyrant, or say they are extremely brutal. The words used are completely different, even though they're describing the same person. For example, consider Hitler back in those days. Those who strongly supported his views at that particular time, they truly believed and declared that he was indeed the greatest hero in the entire world. But for those individuals who opposed him, he was widely considered to be the most brutal person in the entire world, a truly ruthless tyrant with absolutely no humanity. So when it comes to one person, we use different terms to refer to them. This is something we should be aware of as well. So why does Manjushri Bodhisattva need to bestow blessings? Right now, the suffering of sentient beings is extremely severe and afflictions are very serious. So here, the author explains why we truly need to practice. If we don't practice diligently in this world, we ourselves are almost certainly doomed to fail.
Silab samja yirkyo mangdi ndar gangda da jang tarjin jorkala gangtar shi jang kyo mumgo jang gangtar samjang gebjur mumpirwe.
At such a time, the more we think, the more weary we become. Wherever we dwell, favorable conditions are few. Whatever we do, people are displeased. Whatever we contemplate, virtue does not increase. In this, just as was mentioned earlier, in this degenerate age, no matter what we think about, we still develop a strong sense of renunciation. Venerable Longchenpa, in the last verse of the 30 Pieces of Heartfelt Advice, also said, in the final verse, whether we look at others or observe our own words and actions, it is very easy to develop a sense of aversion. So regarding the external world of physical objects and observable phenomena, we can consider this aspect. And the inner world of sentient beings is truly vast and complex. Indeed, many things in your everyday life may not bring you much joy at all. They give rise to a profound sense of aversion, a very strong dislike. It seems that to some extent it really, because sometimes when we see that the environment is bad, bad environment, poor education, bad people, their actions and behavior are all quite bad. So, living in this complex and challenging world, it seems to be very difficult. Why do so many people choose to commit suicide nowadays? There was a wise scholar in the past who once profoundly said, if a person's fear of living surpasses their fear of death, then they will choose suicide. So when we observe so many different things in this vast and wide world that are not ideal and we develop a strong sense of aversion, that's precisely why there are so many individuals who tragically commit suicide. So during the significant time when Mifam Rinpoche was still alive, perhaps the world was not as chaotic and turbulent as it is now. Back then, whether it was on a truly large scale like significant wars between nations, many aspects might not have been so severe or impactful, but perhaps every era has its own issues like this. When reading the autobiography of Khenpo Achung, in many places because of the wars at that time, their retreat camps actually had to be relocated. Actually, at that time, we might think that things were more peaceful and pure back then, but even then, they still had to move many retreat camps. Every time they were in the middle of actual practice, some obstacles would also arise. So, when reading about or thinking of those times, one still develops a sense of renunciation. Many people here are the same way. They say, oh, life is so annoying now, it's so meaningless. They feel that living in this world is pointless. A lot of people often say things like this. Actually, even back then, there were such feelings too. Wherever you live, favorable conditions are few. No matter where you stay, it seems there aren't many favorable circumstances for practice, and there are more obstacles instead. At that time, it might have been true that perhaps in terms of resources, food, drink, clothing, there were some difficulties. But as for external circumstances, other aspects were not necessarily so. But now, indeed, in this modern era, there are so many compelling causes for significant and pervasive distraction. If one delights in indulgence, people will only experience suffering. I think this is mentioned in the Sutra of the Collection of Essential Dharmas. If someone enjoys being careless and indulgent, that person will not find happiness. Even now, perhaps, especially in this current era of information explosion, people are constantly exposed to all kinds of diverse information, and unfortunately, all this information is often fake. But we ourselves are unaware of it. So there are even fewer truly favorable conditions for actual practice. Many of our cherished Dharma friends who embarked this time used to be constantly by the side of the revered Guru and their fellow practitioners, diligently learning and growing together. And the places they lived were also sacred sites for practice. In all aspects, there were probably more favorable conditions. But now, after leaving, some people are on their own, while others are still remaining in some groups. But even so, under these circumstances, the favorable conditions may not be as abundant as before. If at this time we do not now practice diligently, indeed, and only have just a little bit of a basic understanding, it may not be of much help. When there are few favorable conditions for practice, and whatever we do, sentient beings are not pleased. As Mahayana Buddhists, it is our responsibility to satisfy sentient beings, to make them happy and joyful, and this is not something we can push on to others. It is an important responsibility for us. But in this degenerate age, sometimes it seems that doing nothing might be a bit better, because once we do something, people may slander us or be dissatisfied. Everyone seems to be quite dissatisfied. No matter how you truly think about it, it really seems that it's very difficult for virtuous roots in practice to significantly increase, because in such an environment among such people, it is indeed a considerable challenge, a truly significant hurdle. No matter what you think, whether you cultivate bodhicitta, develop renunciation, or do some good deeds, make aspirations, or volunteer, it's very hard for many different aspects and elements of life to truly increase and foster positive, meaningful connections among individuals. So indeed, perhaps everyone should take the time to deeply reflect upon this crucial matter further, considering its profound implications. Sometimes, especially as a dedicated practitioner, it's absolutely necessary to have all these truly positive and beneficial conditions. But nowadays, whether it's people or the environment, it's truly not easy to find these valuable things in this modern era. So it certainly seems that not practicing isn't a viable option either. But if you do indeed practice, virtuous roots and good, wholesome qualities keep steadily decreasing, while negative actions and unwholesome, detrimental deeds keep continuously increasing. At such times, if you happen to become overly anxious, it actually makes your practice significantly worse. So nowadays, sometimes it's important to remember this. If we ourselves lack right view and right mindfulness, it's also not always very easy to actually find them at all. Especially when it comes to practicing Vajrayana, the environment is also very important. The companions on the path around you are also very important. You need to be in a pure Dharma center with some pure-minded people and practice the profound Vajrayana teachings together. The Vajrayana practice itself and its surrounding environment, including all the people you practice with, As long as no one has truly broken their sacred vows or significantly damaged their Samaya commitments, then naturally your profound realization will steadily increase within your mind stream. All kinds of spiritual realizations and deep experiences will certainly arise. If this is not the case, then sometimes even if you work very hard, the external conditions that surround you can still have a certain and quite significant impact. For example, with some of the practices in the Sutrayana, as long as you can remain settled, it's still acceptable. But in Vajrayana, the profound purity of the Dharma center and the diligent adherence to keeping one's sacred vows are indeed highly emphasized and considered of utmost importance. So in this current degenerate age, a period characterized by increasing moral decay and spiritual decline, it is undeniably more difficult to effectively practice. For example, in Guru Padmasambhava's The Precious Garland of the Stages of the Path, it talks quite a lot about practitioners observing their environment, observing their spiritual companions and friends, and observing the timing for practice. These important aspects are discussed in much more detail. I originally wanted to translate this, but it seems like it would be a bit too much to translate and perhaps even a little overwhelming, and some parts are not very easy to understand. Recently, I've also been thinking about translating the commentary on Guru Padmasambhava's Manjushri Nama Samgiti, but I'm not sure if I can finish it. I hope the Dharma protectors will also bless me, because sometimes with the blessings of the Dharma protectors, little by little it can be accomplished. I'm like someone who is especially greedy for hot pot, but I'm not allowed to eat on the spot, and there are so many delicious things right next to me, just sitting there simply. When I see a Dharma teaching, I develop a kind of profound craving for it, because as for the Manjusri Nama Samgiti, it was one of the very last and most significant teachings personally given by Shakyamuni Buddha. As for the Kalachakra Tantra, we don't have a particularly concrete practice method, and practices are quite complex. But as for the Manjusri Nama Samgiti, like the great masters of old in Tibet, every one of them included it in their daily recitations, and so did I. Back in 1995, when His Holiness was ill, during that period in 1995, I recited it every day. Later on, it seems I stopped again. After 1997, His Holiness asked us to recite the Liberation Through Hearing, but after that, I didn't recite it. However, this one, when I look at Padmasambhava's commentary on the Manjushri Nama Samgiti, there are Dharma, treasure teachings, and Kama, oral transmission teachings. As for the Kama lineage, it still exists today. And if we look at the Kama teachings from a historical perspective, Padmasambhava, back in those ancient days, he composed these sacred texts within the mystical Asura cave. At that significant time, when King Trisong Detsen was diligently building the Sami monastery, they encountered some powerful non-human beings who were actively causing disturbances at that period. Later, the great practitioner Niang Tingzin Zangpo, when he used his clairvoyance to observe the situation, saw that the only unparalleled yogi at that time, the only one who could subdue these spirits and demons, was Padmasambhava. So when the king sent 2 monks to go there, they were tasked with a significant mission. It was only when they reached Nepal that they met him. Then Padmasambhava brought with him the commentary on the Manjusri Nama Samgiti and such teachings to Tibet. Of course, in his historical accounts, it is also said that the Manjusri Nama Samgiti at that time was brought by Jangchub Shingyun, who obtained it from countless Manjushri Tantras, and it was then passed down from Garab Dorje to here. Of course, he meticulously wrote it in the distinctive style of a Dzogchen commentary. The Manjusri Nama Samgiti, with the commentary by Buma Moja and the commentary by Rongzom Pandita, has many commentaries. In fact, for about 20 or even 30 years, this has been the case. I have always wanted to translate it before, but of course, if I do translate it, it may not be as easy to understand as the way of the Bodhisattva, because the meaning of the Tantras was never that easy to grasp. But my own life is indeed limited, so in this lifetime, planting a virtuous seed in this regard is profoundly important. And leaving such a Dharma teaching for future generations is a wonderful aspiration to have. But whether this can actually be truly accomplished, I honestly do not know either. No matter what the circumstances may be, it seems like every single day for me, I genuinely don't really pay much attention to a lot of other things, nor do I consciously keep them in my mind. There are many important scriptures and treatises, and I wonder if I can write them down, or if I can explain them. But if I don't explain them, I'm really quite worried. I honestly don't know. For example, the specific ones we covered earlier, the poison-destroying peacock mind training, wisdom sword of demon subduing, If these aren't explained, people might not understand. I've put these up for a long time. But maybe many people haven't said, oh, this is so extraordinary. There hasn't been that kind of reaction. But after it's been explained, the content inside has been brought out, people realize, oh, so this is what's hidden inside. That's why it said, if no one expounds the Dharma, even the wise cannot understand. This is the reason as well. So just simply translating it, in the future, people might not necessarily know about it either. A few years ago, I also very diligently translated 2 commentaries on the Ekaksara Tantra. One is by Garab Dorje, and the other is a commentary by Khenpo Depa, but I didn't dare to teach any of them publicly. I really didn't dare to share them openly. However, regarding some of the merits described inside, I did want to share a portion of those with some people. But later, the necessary conditions from various sides just weren't present. In any case, now everyone still needs to continue to study on their own. Plus, nowadays, it is essential to keep learning. It seems like just for the sake of a lineage, people are talking about it everywhere. Some don't even know whether they're real teachers or fake ones. They often say, hey, you all, I'll give you the empowerment, I'll recite the lineage for you. Others simply do not truly have the necessary lineage. So sometimes when it comes to this lineage, if you're going to teach others, then of course you absolutely must have it. But if it's just for your own practice, as long as you've received the empowerment and completed the preliminaries, you can gradually understand through audio recordings and such. That's also acceptable. Of course, if you do have it, that's fine too. Actually, this doesn't hinder your practice at all. The most important thing is to understand the meaning of the practice text. This is very important. So here, the main point being discussed is the current situation in this age of degeneration. Sentient beings are indeed quite pitiable nowadays. There are many afflictions and few favorable conditions. When we do any virtuous deeds, others aren't happy about it. Instead, they slander you groundlessly, and there are many adverse circumstances. So what should we do at this time? Next, we'll continue to talk about some more practice methods.
Shirungulab Sanshut Mama Ransom Darjan Jimmy Lamkirla Nyamla Nut Tamba Kunar Gar.
Do not overthink external circumstances. Subdue your own mind and use the path of illusion. These are the key points of actual practice, and following them is especially crucial. He says, so what exactly should we do? You see, sentient beings' afflictions are so heavy and favorable conditions are so few. At this time, is there a relatively simple and easy to practice method? There is. He goes on to say this. Don't overthink your external circumstances too much. Just let things unfold naturally and organically. We should subdue our own minds. If we use the method of seeing things as dreamlike and illusory in our practice and focus on the essential point, then this is indeed an extremely crucial point. This particular method of practice does, in fact, truly exist. Most of us are probably mainly engaged in some superficial practices. For example, people in the world who don't believe in Buddhism, they seek happiness through various means. Some drink alcohol, some smoke, some engage in entertainment activities. Some individuals make money while others spend money, particularly when making significant large purchases, trying to obtain happiness in this way. But for us practitioners, some of us also study the 5 great treatises and engage in debates or analyze and contemplate and so on, seeking to gain benefit from these activities. But what is true practice really like? The main point is not to place too much emphasis on analyzing and observing external phenomena. This is where practitioners differ from theorists. A distinction remains. For example, when studying the 5 great treatises, how is it explained in Madhyamaka, Abhidharmakosha, and Abhisamaya Lankara? We analyze these in detail, actually in a certain and very real sense. This is also an excessive and undue focus on external matters and concerns. It is still a kind of investigation, a kind of observation. But what is most important? These things are not actually that important. The most important thing is to tame our own mind. Previously, the renowned Shantideva also said, if you tame this one mind, everything is tamed. If we are able to tame our own mind, then everything becomes manageable and easy. Observing 100 external dharmas is not as effective as observing the one dharma within. Didn't Mifam Rinpoche also say this in the past? So we must tame our own mind. Of course, taming our own mind, it sounds quite simple when we talk about it, but in reality, some dedicated practitioners spend many years in retreat. For many, many years. But when they encounter attractive sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and desires, they may still give rise to greed, anger, and ignorance just the same. This kind of situation happens, so what should we do? In fact, this mainly comes down to actual practice. If you haven't put in the effort in practical cultivation, then even if you already understand the external theories, it's not enough. But in reality, it's not actually that effective. Recently, we extensively talked about the 5 poisons and how to effectively cut through them with the sharp and discerning sword of wisdom leading to liberation. And when we should carefully use the sharp sword of wisdom to deeply analyze, theoretically, you do indeed understand it. But in practical reality, sometimes your own ingrained habits are already very hard to fundamentally change. Nowadays, people also talk about this. Many lay people in the world, to put it in worldly terms. For example, there is a person, he built a bicycle himself. According to what most of us are used to, when you turn right, you pull to the right. If you want to turn left, you pull to the left. But when he operates it, his clever trick is actually the exact opposite of what you might expect. Then he clearly tells others, when you want to turn left, you should firmly pull to the right. And when you want to turn right, pull to the left. The theory is very simple and easy to understand right away, but when it comes to actually doing it, because he has been used to it since he was a child, after forming the habit, he understands the theory very well. But in actual practice, it still can't be applied that simply. In fact, our cultivation is the same way. In the past, Gendon Chompel also said, if you rely on this kind of analysis, it seems like all phenomena do not truly exist. But when my hand gets pricked by a sharp thorn, it truly feels like it does indeed exist. So the theoretical understanding and the actual lived experience don't really match up. So from a theoretical perspective, we completely understand that things don't exist, that everything is empty, like a dream or an illusion. But if you haven't diligently practiced and truly honed your skills, then it's certainly not easy to genuinely and effectively put those learned principles into practical application. I remember in chapter 10 of The Great Perfection, Rest in the Nature of Mind, the non-duality chapter. When I was talking with others, it seems that during a chat, I even made a bet with someone, and I won 100 yuan. I said that in the Great Chariot commentary on resting in the nature of mind, there's a metaphor about a lion and a dog. For example, when you throw a stone, the dog chases after the stone, but the lion actually goes after the very person who threw the stone. It relentlessly chases him. So, as ordinary people, when we truly see suffering and happiness outside, we must carefully consider our response. We always look for them just in the external world. But for truly wise and insightful practitioners, they consistently seek to understand the fundamental root cause within the depths of their own minds. So, at that particular time, I genuinely did remember, even though I had translated it a considerable amount of time ago, probably about 20 years ago. But I think this particular metaphor, which was also explicitly mentioned in the Maharatnakuta Sutra, this metaphor for us practitioners, is still very important. As ordinary people now, we always blame external circumstances for everything. Like, oh, it's because of what you said at that time, or because of your actions. We look for the root of all our afflictions in other people and external events. But a true practitioner first sees that everything manifests from the mind, and then ultimately realizes the mind is empty in nature. They analyze things in this way. At that point, they have truly found the root cause. It's like the metaphor of the lion and the dog. I remember this is from Mipham Rinpoche, and in another Dzogchen teaching, this metaphor is also cited. This metaphor also appears in the Chinese text, The Record of Pointing at the Moon. The lion and the dog are often used to illustrate the profound difference between seeking the mind and seeking external phenomena. So, in all these practices, diligent cultivation is very important. That's why it's often said that as practitioners, we really should, at the very least, have received some essential teachings on bodhicitta, which is the awakening mind, teachings on renunciation, and teachings on recognizing the nature of mind, whether it's Chan teachings or Vajrayana teachings. We should learn what our own mind is really like. Once you understand this principle, then gradually practice it step by step. First and foremost, you should at least understand it theoretically at a fundamental level. And after understanding it in theory, then analyze it further in greater detail. Back then, Khenpo Achung also, when he was receiving profound teachings from the Venerable Nyoshu Longtok at that particular time, he was specifically asked to receive the sacred transmission of the 7 treasuries and the 3 restings from a revered Lama named Awo in order to diligently listen to the complete transmission of the 7 treasuries and the 3 restings. After he finished listening, he went to see his teacher. When he met his teacher, the teacher asked him, "Did you happen to listen to the 7 treasuries collection?" "Yes, I certainly did." "What exactly is described within the 7 treasuries?" "The states of realization and experience." "How do those compare to your own continuum?" He replied, "There is simply no way to compare them at all. How could I possibly compare myself to the omniscient Longchenpa? I only have an intellectual understanding. I haven't truly realized or attained it." At that time, the teacher said, "Your attitude is correct. Some people just talk big and boast a lot, thinking they're right." Then he was told to read the Treasury of Dharmadhatu. I don't remember the details of this part very clearly. He was told you should read the Treasury of Dharmadhatu. Although there are many scriptural citations in the Treasury of Dharmadhatu, but the most important thing is that you need to remember certain key instructions, because the Treasury of Dharmadhatu is the core of Patrul Rinpoche's practice, and also the core practice of his revered teacher was a profound influence, as well as the essential practice method of Nyoshu Langtok, and it is also my own practice method. At that time, Khenpo Achung also said the same thing, because in the 7 treasuries, or when praising the Treasury of Dharmadhatu, it is the essence among the Dharmadhatu treasury. It is said that the Treasury of Dharmadhatu is truly the most essential or the very quintessence of the profound Dharma. It is also the portrait of the practice and realization of the omniscient Longchenpa. So at that time, and later on, it seems that Khenpo Achung placed special emphasis on the Treasury of Dharmadhatu. It could also be considered a core aspect of his own personal practice. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok taught us about this in the past. Moreover, he required all 63 Khenpos at that particular time to each provide guidance and instruction. Later, many of us believed that this was an empowerment given to us by the Jigme Phuntsok at that time, and also a form of guidance for us. Back then, every year, he would listen in his own room, and then each Khenpo would first thoroughly review the previous day's lesson before the class began, and then the Venerable Jigme Phuntsok continued teaching the profound Dharma. So, although today we are not discussing the 7 treasuries here, if we are to talk about practice, there are many key instructions for practice. Many of those present here have also received empowerments and have practiced the preliminary practices. As for what should be taught within the Nyingma tradition, for example, the great perfection of supreme wisdom, the Garuda spreads its wings, as well as the treasury of Dharmadhatu, and later the great perfection of Manjushri, and parts of the quintessence of the Guru's heart have been taught. Then, as for whether you practice, the key lies with yourself. If you do not practice, you might not know when you will ever practice. His Holiness also said before, if you haven't started practicing by the time you are 30, it probably means you won't practice at all. Some people might think, oh, I'm extremely busy day and night with study, contemplation, and practice. But His Holiness also said before, just as Master Rongtern once said, study and contemplate well during the day, and practice diligently at night. So, as I clearly see it, for each and every one of us, we don't really and truly know what our current and actual state of practice is. If right now, at this very moment, all the teachings you have received before are not being put into practice by yourself, it is truly a pity. At the time of death, you will have no realization at all. Of course, such realization is not that easy to attain, but at the very least, regarding emptiness and the dreamlike nature of things, you should gain a genuine certainty. If you say this is difficult, the realization of a bodhisattva on the bhumis is indeed very hard to achieve. But if you say it's not difficult, at the very least you can have a similar kind of certainty. And a similar dreamlike experience and realization should not be that difficult to attain. So I think the key for everyone here is whether you can set your direction accurately. On one hand, you need to study and contemplate. On the other hand, you really need to gain at least a little benefit from the Dharma. Otherwise, even if you encounter the Dharma every day, your own mind stream may just become more rigid and harder to transform. Many past teachings on practice have also mentioned this, that generally those who only study and contemplate, their mind stream is extremely rigid, lacking any nourishment, any sense of moistening. This is very important. If we only talk about some theories verbally without truly understanding or applying them in practice, of course, that's still better than not talking at all. But even so, if we ourselves truly don't have any sense of moistening. What does that mean? For example, having faith in the Guru and the three jewels, having renunciation towards samsara, regarding Dzogchenat at the very least, having a heartfelt conviction that cannot be swayed by others, then this is what we call a mind that is nourished, a view that is at least a little bit moistened. This is very important for everyone. Otherwise, if we just talk about theory every single day, then indeed, it doesn't mean much. Other day with Khenpos and Khenmos, right before we were about to part ways, I also said that in the future, some people we may still see each other again, but for some, maybe not. Given our current age now and various external conditions and circumstances that affect us, my only true hope is that for the rest of your lives, you don't focus on your houses, your cars, and other material possessions, or the external construction and architectural design of grand temples. The most important thing for His Holiness and for us, what is most valued in a lifetime? Teaching the Dharma and practicing it ourselves. If we have this, all those other favorable external conditions, anyone can achieve. Everyone is busy for the sake of eating, drinking, and having fun. But even if we do those things better than others, it doesn't have meaning. No matter how good the buildings and external things are, it's quite possible that we might not even have time to enjoy them. But most importantly, over all these years, if everyone has worked so hard to accumulate things, then we should share the nectar-like and truly beneficial aspects of the Dharma with all the sentient beings who are deeply and intrinsically connected to us. If the conditions in various aspects aren't present, then in this brief life, we should still practice every time we can. If things go well, for example, practicing for 100 or 200 days, but if that's really not possible, at the very least, once a year or once a month, you should go into retreat for a period of time. When you go into retreat, it's not just for the sake of retreating. It's not like that. You should genuinely and sincerely pray to your guru and forcefully work to transform the continuum of your own mind. Of course, this kind of transformation may also require a certain method. If you try to force it too much, your mind might become even more unruly. This is certainly possible. But at the very least, many profound teachings have been given, so use these teachings to overcome your own afflictions. Next, let's talk about the actual practice. The actual practice is indeed a bit advanced. So if we look at those in the past who had a foundation in study and contemplation in this area, they might be able to manage. But for those without a foundation, it might not be particularly easy to understand. However, this is still extremely precious. Seeing everything as like an image, when you thoroughly examine, nothing appears unexamined. Following deluded thoughts binds you attachment. Letting go brings no harm. This is indeed very good. Here it quite says, our physical senses, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, and our body are given to you. If this were Dzogchen, this could be a direct pointing out instruction from the esoteric teachings. But here, in the exoteric tradition, this is a different approach. It's an exoteric method of observation, how you practice it. The practice is very simple. It doesn't tell you to practice Manjushri Bodhisattva or to practice Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. There's no such instruction. Theoretically, it tells you to practice. So how do you practice in theory? Any form that your eyes see, including bottles, pillars, houses, and also computers, any such material things, you should truly regard them as mere fleeting images, like reflections appearing in a clear mirror. Or, for example, when we walk, a dark, ominous shadow appears clearly under the bright sunlight. These particular things may indeed appear, but in reality they don't truly, actually, really exist, right? These phenomena fundamentally do not exist. So why is this truly the case? Any form that your eyes perceive and behold, for example, a truly beautiful and captivating person, or a stunning and appealing appearance, or any incredibly delicious and appetizing food you might see and desire, it may look especially appealing, or it may look especially unappealing, including your enemies, those who make you feel particularly upset inside. In such specific cases, if you carefully observe further, you will notice you'll find there is nothing, no foundation at all. In Tibetan, this is called no trace, but if we just say no trace, it feels a bit insufficient. So upon investigation, there is nothing. When you truly examine it, not even the tiniest particle be found. This is not just something we say to comfort everyone. It's not like practicing impurity meditation, like, oh, there's nothing there. It's not like that. This is truly indeed the case. When we carefully and thoroughly observe these forms using Madhyamaka reasoning, as in Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way, I see many have studied it well. I really want to teach entering the middle way, but I don't know if I can accomplish that in this lifetime. If everyone truly studies the fundamental wisdom of the middle way and the four Madhyamaka treatises, when we observe external objects, there truly is nothing there. Using the reasoning of neither being nor non-being dependent origination, the diamond sliver reasoning, and also the reasoning of neither one nor many, when we genuinely examine with these logics, not even the tiniest particle can be found. When we truly analyze with logical reasoning, nothing is found. Or if we follow the Yogacara school's Pramanavartika, for example, when we analyze with those methods, nothing is found either. But even though nothing is found, in conventional terms, appearances still manifest. When we are not analyzing, in our everyday reality, all kinds of the usual conventional phenomena will still appear. If you follow these appearances and let yourself be carried away by deluded thoughts, then you will definitely be bound by attachments such as greed and anger and other negative emotions. But if you can naturally let go, then there will be neither benefit nor harm. Of course, Mifam Rinpoche may be expressing a high-level view here, but if you can let go, there is neither benefit nor harm. However, it's very hard to let go, isn't it? Even for those of us who have practiced for many years, we feel that when we are analyzing, nothing exists, and theoretically nothing exists. But when it comes to truly letting go, it seems we just can't do it. I've heard that some people in retreat, for example, there's a retreat center in our Tibetan region, that actually exists and operates. Nowadays, because there's cell signal, they can simply turn on their personal iPads and instantly watch live, thrilling horse races, enjoying the excitement of the competition right inside their comfortable retreat rooms. Perhaps it is because they are native Tibetans, a people with a deep-rooted and particular fondness for the ancient tradition of horseback riding and equestrian activities. These practitioners, it's said, even inside their retreat rooms, watch live broadcasts of exciting horse races. There are indeed cases like this. So nowadays, if we don't practice diligently, it's true that even some of our fellow practitioners who have gone down this particular path, even though external forms are like mere images, appearing but lacking any inherent nature, we become even more deluded by something else. For example, what's inside computers or phones, which is an illusion within an illusion upon an illusion, yet we often take it as truly real. Many elderly people, even though their eyesight isn't particularly good, still tend to place a phone quite far away from them, and keep watching, always lost in the internet. Some volunteer devotees also feel very troubled themselves. They look at their phones for a while, then look at their phones again after a bit, as if not looking at it brings about a kind of natural urge, what you might call a kind of, especially with today's short videos and such, it creates a kind of powerful addiction, a strong dependency, you see, and it's actually a physical change indeed, not just a psychological one. It truly alters certain patterns of thinking. In this way, every single day, many of us are staring at our phones, constantly surfing the internet and engaging with digital content, completely absorbed in this world. Now, according to some interesting statistics from some American scholars, if we look at it from the perspective of daily habits, every person, after about 7 minutes, will check their phone. And in a single day, they might check it 205 times. There are statistics like this after all. If you frequently check your mobile phone 205 times throughout the day, that's actually a huge number. But within all that, how much do we really and truly gain or actually benefit from it? It's almost negligible. So, as practitioners, as individuals who diligently study and deeply contemplate, if we find ourselves spending the entire day holding our mobile phones, perhaps for a significant portion of the day, or even considerably longer, and all our time is consumed like this, it really is quite a pity. It would be better if everyone, especially those who have a bit of wisdom, would make a conscious effort to schedule time for reading, or force themselves to do something meaningful, to be volunteer devotees. Then actually it is possible to do so. In fact, take TikTok, for example. I heard that the owner of TikTok is indeed called Zhang Yiming, right? He himself never actually watches TikTok. He knows that this is something they created themselves, and that it harms both body and mind, even life itself. They never watch it at all. But whether as a consumer or as someone with economic interests, he deliberately sets a cunning trap for you, drawing many unsuspecting people in to spend their hard-earned money here at this very location. In the end, your money is taken and your time is gone too. This is, in the age of the Dharma's decline, a particularly harmful kind of illusion. But there's nothing we can do about it, right? Actually, if we really want to practice diligently in our daily lives, nowadays, some contemporary scholars often indeed say that the internet is a huge waste of time. Take Bill Gates, for example. He set strict requirements for himself. He read about a few books every week, around 30 to 50 books a year. Back then, it was Charlie Munger or someone. That old guy, he passed away the year before last. As for what he said, I've quoted him before. He especially loved reading books, particularly those that offered deep insights and profound knowledge. It seems that he also diligently read a certain number of books every single year, consistently. Some of these scholars force themselves to consistently do truly meaningful things, such as diligently reading valuable and insightful books. This is quite different from us, the lower-level consumers or individuals with a weaker foundational understanding, who are easily targeted by various businesses so that they can make money off of you and ultimately waste your valuable time. So, what we truly want to say here is that all external appearances, if you observe them closely, truly do not exist in reality. But when you're not observing, they seem to appear. If we follow these illusory thoughts that arise, in the end you'll end up being bound by them. So when you understand the consequences, you'll naturally let go. But what I'm saying is this naturally letting go can feel a bit tangled. And for us beginners, it's quite difficult, even though it sounds very nice, to naturally let go and naturally settle the mind. But if you try to force yourself to settle, it actually gets worse and worse. You think, I can't look at my phone, and then you feel miserable, or I can't let myself be so distracted, and so on. The more you force yourself to do, it seems to have a kind of opposite effect. Maybe your mind starts to generate more and more of this particular feeling. For example, if I find it really hard to quit smoking, every single time I think I absolutely can't smoke, and I keep thinking like this more and more, then in the end I might develop a kind of obsession or compulsion. This probably isn't very good. So why is that? What should we do? How should we practice? Actually, if you truly understand the principle that everything is like a dream or an illusion, of course, this might require studying Madhyamaka or using some Dzogchen instructions. Only then can you naturally let go. But naturally letting go isn't that easy. However, if you understand this, then you truly won't be swayed by external circumstances. At that point, all kinds of phenomena in the external world, whether they are good, they won't really harm or truly benefit you. If they're bad, it's precisely the same. Actually, in this entire world that is like a dream or an illusion, there is neither benefit nor harm to you. This is very important for us practitioners. Next, let's continue talking about forms, what the eyes see.
Tewe xisar nangwa chokkan lar gimar manor tabi lobjigane pyongyang magga gakyang mardig bar pangdok tsidar chara warla tong.
Therefore, regarding all forms, let your mind abide as if in a fleeting dream or an ephemeral illusion. When they arise, do not rejoice. When they cease, do not resent. Do not calculate benefit or harm, just let things be. So all these various forms that the eyes truly see, as I just mentioned and explained, what the eyes actually perceive, whether they are good, pleasing forms or bad, unpleasant appearances, do not follow them, do not become attached to them at all. Let your mind rest in a state like a dream or an illusion. In this way, when the time comes, when all sorts of various external phenomena truly appear, you won't feel overly delighted either. If a positive situation arises today, or a pleasing appearance, you won't be swayed by it. And if you don't obtain these things, or if they disappear, you won't develop aversion, nor will you calculate gain or loss. For us ordinary people in daily life, we're always worried about gain and loss. We spend all day running around, caught up in these concerns about gain and loss. But at that point, you won't be calculating gain or loss. And in going with the natural flow of existence, any kind of restrictive constraint stemming from conventional morality or rigid concepts of what is considered good and what is considered evil, none of these will ever become a burdensome shackle for you. You should be in a very free and unrestrained state. You can live your life with complete ease and all that you see before your very eyes. Of course, as for this particular concept, actually, it's also profoundly mentioned in traditional culture. Didn't the ancient philosopher Laozi articulate this in the past as well? He famously stated, the 5 colors make people blind. If you're completely absorbed in the vibrant 5 colors, it truly makes you blind. The overwhelming 5 sounds make people deaf, and the rich 5 flavors dull the palate. Galloping and hunting can drive the heart mad. He was talking about all the sights, sounds, scents, and tastes, making people dazzled and overwhelmed. In the end, the mind goes wild. That's how he put it. But they didn't have these teachings and key instructions. They were saying that the external world entices and confuses you, and you might become abnormal. But in Buddhism, when it comes to observing the mind, carefully analyzing the mind, and truly understanding the key instructions, there are many, many methods of practice. Therefore, if you seek within the nature, who is the one who loves and who is the one who is loved? This should be from the way of the Bodhisattva, right? If we search within our own true nature, what exactly is love and what exactly is the object of love? In the same way, if we search truly within our true nature, ourselves, for form and the formless, what exactly is form and what is the formless, we can use this kind of reasoning. From material phenomena to mental phenomena, all of these dharmas. If we search for them within our true nature, if we look for them within our true nature, in the end, we won't find any real meaning at all. So I still highly recommend studying a bit and gaining some valuable knowledge. All right, studying some Madhyamaka, and then you'll truly understand that all phenomena in the ultimate sense are unfindable, free from the four extremes and 8 conceptual elaborations. In the conventional world, everything appears yet lacks inherent existence like a dream or illusion. If you understand this principle, you won't be elated when things arise, nor disheartened when they cease. Throughout the whole process, there's really nothing to gain or lose. You also won't be particularly attached to the fundamental ideas of benefit or harm, right or wrong, or to distinctions like absolute black and white, and so on and so forth. All these various and diverse dualistic opposing dharmas will no longer flood your mind. It just won't happen. Especially if we've studied some Madhyamaka analytical methods or practiced some Dzogchen meditation techniques. We should be very clear about this. This pertains to the I among the faculties of eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body that we just mentioned. Generally speaking, when it comes to the eye, it is the easiest faculty to use when discerning emptiness. After that comes the ear, and then the remaining faculties follow. This is something we all know from studying the Shurangama Sutra. Everyone is aware of this. The easiest is the direct pointing using form dharmas, using form, because many things that the eye sees actually do not require the reasoning of Buddhist logic or Madhyamaka analysis. Now, when physicists analyze things, they are also analyzing the phenomena that our eyes perceive. In the end, they cannot arrive at the existence of a truly existent particle. They ultimately cannot find it. Therefore, physicists believe that the entire world is indeed nothing but an illusion. Moreover, unless you reach a true state, the state of the world, you will not comprehend quantum physics. So this principle is very easy to understand. Therefore, we are not doing this just to get everyone to study Buddhism, nor is it to cater to our own viewpoints. It's not like that at all. These Buddhist perspectives don't require, especially in the 21st century. Nowadays, a significant amount of scientific, particularly on the surface, appears to be remarkably advanced and sophisticated externally. At this very moment, the profound wisdom and principles of Buddhism can completely and seamlessly keep pace with and even complement these impressive scientific advancements and discoveries. This is not Buddhists boasting about themselves. It's not like that. It should be through analyzing their theories and the actual principles behind them. In the process of analysis, you will definitely develop your valuable skills. A profound kind of wisdom and unwavering conviction that absolutely cannot be shaken or easily swayed. Next, let's also carefully analyze the teachings that are heard with the ear. Just now we talked about how everything seen by the eye is illusory.
Rnavi kanto chakchar tavar tev tagna zimit maftag nyamgar nang tevi rnavi tutsadak tamnang lar jimar manur tavi lovshagne zang jutak gatang ngamjut magga med panos tsigdab charva wurla tong.
Everything heard is like an echo. Upon investigation, nothing unexamined appears. Therefore, regarding all the words you hear, let your mind abide as if in an illusion or a dream. Do not rejoice at kind words, nor be annoyed by harsh ones. Do not calculate gain or loss. Just let things be naturally. Earlier, we discussed the objects of the eye faculty. Now we are talking about the objects of the ear faculty. All the external sounds that our ears hear are actually no different from echoes in an empty valley. There is really no distinction. If you truly investigate, these external phenomena in reality do not exist at all. For example, whether the sounds we hear are pleasant or unpleasant nowadays, some principles in science are also like this. The continuity of sound, although in the Abhidharmakosha it is said to have a continuity, but when you examine this, you still can't find it. It doesn't exist at all. However, when you don't investigate, it seems to exist primarily and predominantly within the realm of mere appearances. So, if you are to truly and deeply understand the fundamental principle at play here, then whatever speech your ears may hear, sometimes praise, sometimes slander, sometimes pleasant words, or even harsh criticisms, sometimes harsh words, all of these can be settled. The mind can rest in a state like a dream or an illusion. Of course, the condition for abiding in this way is that you truly understand that all sounds are just like echoes in an empty valley. There's really no difference. You need to understand this principle. If you don't understand this principle and just think, oh, all sounds are like dreams and illusions, and you force yourself to deliberately abide in that state, it might not actually be very effective. That's just you intentionally trying to do it. But if you have truly realized all phenomena through the middle way, if you have some realization of this, then wow, what we see here is actually no different from the appearances in a dream. All the sounds that we can possibly hear are actually no different from the sounds one might experience in a dream. So if you fully understand this principle, things appear yet lack inherent nature, like dreams. Then you abide in this kind of state, then all language for you indeed is neither beneficial nor harmful. When others praise you with kind words, you don't feel overly joyful. After all, it's just an echo in an empty valley. What is there to be happy about? If others start to insult you or speak ill of you, there's absolutely nothing to feel any pain about either. In the profound Mahayana Adhyashaya Satparamita Sutra, each of the 8 worldly concerns is meticulously analyzed in great detail. If someone were to insult you, you should simply see that sound as just an echo in a vast valley. From here all the way to the end, one is truly not swayed by the 8 worldly concerns. So if you genuinely understand these profound principles, then truly, when others insult or criticize you, you will remain unperturbed. You probably won't feel unhappy about it either. However, this is just in theory. There was a wise Khenpo at our Buddhist institute who often told others in class that all sounds are like echoes in an empty valley. He would often emphasize this point. But later it seemed that he himself encountered some harsh words and slander from others. It seemed that at that particular point in time he became somewhat deeply attached to it. Then he started to feel intense anger and so on, and other negative emotions which began to consume him. Later, some people put these 2 recordings together, because now on computers, all phenomena are like echoes in an empty valley. And then later, you could hear what others said about him. So sometimes there really is a big difference between practice and theory. If it's just theory, you also understand all sounds are echoes in an empty valley. Others' criticism and harm are all just appearances and lack true substance. But if you haven't practiced well yourself, or if you do not have a very firm and thorough understanding of the subject matter, when you actually encounter certain situations, it seems like all of this is of no help at all. Sometimes in our lives, we inevitably encounter many adverse conditions. In the past, we very often heard some dedicated lay practitioners, when they first started their spiritual journey, say with genuine astonishment, "Ah, how truly extraordinary and utterly remarkable this is. The Guru is indeed a Buddha, and this Dharma is especially precious." But when their own afflictions arise in the end, or when they themselves encounter some obstacles, all those previously held slogans from before completely vanish from their minds, and they become extremely troubled and deeply distressed. I distinctly recall seeing in the Udana Sutra that it explicitly states at that particular time, when King Virudaka killed all the members of the Shakya clan, when they were all killed, Shakyamuni Buddha remained completely unmoved. He did not, because his relatives and friends, most of them, had already passed away. After they had died, he felt absolutely no pain whatsoever at all, so he then spoke some truly profound verses. and among them there is one particular line that I remember very clearly and profoundly: in the midst of sorrow there is no grief. Generally speaking, for the enlightened Buddhas and compassionate bodhisattvas, as those who truly perceive and understand the fundamental nature of reality, the discerning seer finds vibrant vitality and profound aliveness in the very act of seeing. In the midst of sorrow there is no actual grief or suffering. There is no grief within sorrow. But for us ordinary people, in the midst of sorrow, when it's time to feel sad, we still feel sad. Even those who study Madhyamaka, who study it every day and are quite accomplished, will feel sorrow when the time comes. Some practitioners of Dzogchen who have decent level of understanding, but when something happens, when it's time to feel sorrow, pain, or distress, they still experience distress. This is just like what we mentioned earlier. If you don't practice regularly, many things in theory are indeed very difficult. So generally, only after truly realizing the dreamlike and illusory nature of things, as it says here, one will not feel joy because of pleasant words, nor will one feel pain because of harsh words. There is no sense of gain or loss. Everything just follows its natural course. One simply won't be swayed by these things at all. This is what we just discussed regarding the faculty of hearing. As for the next three, smell, taste, and touch, the very same principle applies to smell, taste, touch, and dharmas. The same principle fundamentally applies to these three in the middle, even though it wasn't explicitly elaborated upon. Next, we'll talk about the very last and final of the six sense faculties.
Yilla kan shir varnar mugjen draft tagna jemet mafta nyam gar nang devi yilla kan shir nam tolar dimar manam tavi lo jagne zan to gata ngan to magga met pano tigdap jar warla to.
Once we go through this verse, that will wrap up today's session. What appears in the mind is like a mirage. When you examine it, nothing is found, but when you don't, it seems to appear. Therefore, all the distinctions that arise in the mind dwell as if in an illusion or a dream. One does not rejoice at good thoughts, nor detest bad ones, does not calculate gain or loss, but lets things be naturally. Regarding the last one, the consciousness faculty, the mental faculty, whatever manifests within the mental faculty, all the happiness, all the unhappiness, and so on. In actual fact, if you truly and carefully examine them, they are no different from a mere mirage appearing in the empty air. When you examine them, nothing is actually there. But if you don't thoroughly examine, all sorts of unexpected phenomena will appear, and your mind will be completely filled with all kinds of things. Sometimes you feel happy, sometimes unhappy, sometimes you may have virtuous thoughts, and sometimes you may have unwholesome ones. All kinds of distinctions and appearances arise one after another, just like clouds and mist in the sky constantly appearing. But if you truly understand this, as I just mentioned, like in the treasury of Dharmadhatu, then you will grasp its profound meaning. I still recommend today, for those who have received empowerment, practice the preliminaries, and received the lineage transmission before, it is still good to often read texts like the Treasury of Dharmadhatu and some other particularly blessed books, to regularly read and study them yourself, so that you have something to rely on. This is very important. In this way, naturally, even in a dreamlike or illusory state, you can remain at ease within certain experiences. If any kind of conceptual thought arises in your mind, then you can let your mind rest in the dreamlike, illusory nature of all things. But when you reach a certain point, even when virtuous thoughts arise, you won't feel particularly delighted. And when unwholesome thoughts arise, you also won't feel particularly averse or distressed at all. It won't be like that. You won't be calculating, just letting things be exactly as they truly are. There won't be any sadness, worry, or greed whatsoever, or any other negative emotions. So, for much of our daily practice, therefore, our own deluded thoughts and conceptualizations, which in Chan Buddhism is called piling delusion upon delusion, putting a head on top of a head, especially when we add yet another layer of delusion ourselves, and then add yet another layer again. But in reality, either you are someone with sharp faculties who can practice directly, or you need to do the preliminary practices and contemplate properly. In the end, you truly develop faith in the three jewels. At that point, it seems that practice becomes much easier. Otherwise, if you try to forcibly suppress your deluded thoughts, it doesn't work very well. In the past, Master Yingguang said, when you have deluded thoughts, just ignore them. But if you tell yourself to ignore them, they actually arise even more. There's a kind of counteractive effect, and they become even more apparent. If you find it difficult at this point, it's very easy to develop obsessive-compulsive disorder. What is obsessive-compulsive disorder? For example, you've already washed your hands, but you still feel like it's not enough. So you wash them again, then you do something else, and then something more, and so on. We think, I can't have deluded thoughts, but they arise. I must stop them. And then they arise again. This way, it can become very painful. So this is also why it is the case that the practice we're talking about here is quite difficult. Generally speaking, for example, with modern science and technology, we can indeed discover things about external material phenomena, but ultimately they do not truly exist. As for external sounds, science can also analyze them, including aspects like smell and touch. There is at least some understanding of these particular senses. But when it comes to the realm of consciousness, let alone the objects of consciousness, even the very nature of consciousness itself, right now, it's still shrouded in mist and clouds for them. It's like a blind person feeling only the tail of an elephant, exactly the same situation. So on the surface, science may seem impressive. Nowadays, humans can go to the moon, travel through the sky and Earth. It seems like there's nothing we can't do, everything is possible. But in reality, when it comes to the clear and aware mind present in every sentient being's own continuum, they know absolutely nothing about it. Sometimes when we carefully observe humanity, it genuinely seems like we've made some significant progress. Compared to the distant past, in virtually every bustling city, there are now magnificent skyscrapers majestically towering into the clouds, or extensive highways crisscrossing everywhere. In many ways, compared to life in ancient times, it certainly seems like, compared to the past, there should be rapid and constant development. But in a certain significant aspect, each and every one of us, from a young age, is immersed in the internet, lost in this kind of illusory world. Many people can't even truly understand the nature of their own minds. You could say this is quite a significant regression. Even more than 2,500 years ago, throughout much of human history, there were so many great masters and accomplished beings. Especially now, in this degenerate age, the crucial support for monasteries is progressively dwindling more and more, and consequently, the comprehensive education of monastics and their overall spiritual and mental state of mind is regrettably receiving less and less dedicated attention and consideration. People in every country are all preoccupied with external sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and sensations. At such times, this inner suffering keeps surging forth like a vast and overwhelming flooding ocean. The dark and ominous clouds of inner confusion are increasingly shrouding and enveloping our entire world. At this critical time, what can truly and effectively lift away the dense fog and bring clarity, what can truly lift the fog, is the sun of supreme wisdom, radiating unparalleled brilliance. But such wisdom is as rare as stars at dawn. So I truly think that everyone should sometimes take a closer look and begin to pay much more careful attention to this, especially deep within our own minds, to the phenomena that appear like a mirage, vivid yet lacking true essence. We must understand the aspects of Vajrayana, esoteric teachings. If you don't understand Vajrayana, then indeed, if you only rely on the teachings of the exoteric tradition, it may not necessarily produce immediate and highly effective results. If you truly and genuinely want to practice, then still, I'm not intentionally trying to recommend anything in particular to absolutely everyone. But if I speak sincerely from my heart, if you really want to recognize the true nature of the mind, or understand the origins and workings of the mind, at the very least, as in the preliminary practices of Vajrayana, you should specifically observe the mind's origin, its abiding place, and precisely where it goes, and its ultimate destination. And then whether the mind itself has any color or shape. If it does not, then all the myriad phenomena that appear, all-encompassing and diverse, arising from the mind, what exactly are they? Actually, at this point, we need to understand that all of us sentient beings, countless as we are actually under the profound and pervasive power of an ignorant, delusive drug, completely and utterly asleep in a world of profound confusion, unable to awaken ourselves from this deep slumber, nor awaken others from their similar state of unawareness and illusion. If we do not awaken ourselves, others cannot awaken us either. So sometimes sentient beings, this world, is actually quite pitiable and sad. That's why the omniscient Mifam Rinpoche here is speaking on a rather profound level. But for many of us, can we truly reflect on the principles of the Dharma? Many people I encounter currently these days, especially the younger ones, ask, why did I come into this world? You keep asking this question every time. In fact, some people are indeed searching for the meaning of their lives and need to contemplate their own lives. But some people are very confused about even the most basic principles. Sometimes I joke with them half seriously. Why did you come into this world? Why are you here? You should ask your karma. Actually, under the control of karma, it's not you can come just because you want to, nor can you avoid coming because you don't want to. It's not like that. The reason we are in this world is due to karma from past lives. If we do not realize emptiness, everything is like a dream. We will continue wandering confusion this world, enduring boundless, immeasurable suffering. Therefore, in these aspects, we should listen and contemplate more from a theoretical perspective, and also practice more in our actual actions. In this way, just as we are discussing here, all forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations, everything we perceive, will be recognized as being like a dream or an illusion. And if we can abide in such a state, then this world, there is nothing to gain and nothing to lose, right and wrong. All of it is just an illusion within a dream. Other than that, there is nothing else. Studying Buddhism is meaningless. That's not the case. If within the deluded appearances we do not study Buddhism, if we do not eliminate what could be an even greater confusion, we will still remain in a dreamlike, illusory world, experiencing boundless suffering. Therefore, it is especially necessary for us. It is highly recommended that everyone should diligently study Madhyamaka and Dzogchen. At the same time, you should also reflect on this every day. Try to minimize your exposure to those electronic devices that can cause confusion to your body and mind. You should use them only when absolutely necessary, and instead spend your time doing truly meaningful things. All right, that's all for today.
Bandara Banma Sadar